We did it. We're recording.
Sweet.
Jeff Tretta, welcome to Heart Songs, the podcast.
Thank you.
So I'm not in any hurry here, but I guess, I don't know, just for, because this will be viewed someday, for the viewing public, what this podcast is taking a Weezer song called Heart Songs that's from the 2008 album, the Red Album. And taking what Rivers Cuomo did there as far as like telling his story of music and how music like grew him up, I guess you could say, or how he grew up through music, and then using that same pattern to talk about other artists, in this case you, and the journey. And even though that conversation can go for days, because I feel like we all have, an almost daily journey of being artistic. So we're being, especially as a child, like you're being inspired all the time by different things. Thought it would be fun, just as far as like a short form podcast, to zoom in on little moments of inspiration. So in your case, and all guests of the show, I asked to send in the few songs that you picked, and we're just going to go through them one by one, and we're just going to like talk about kind of the why behind those, and see if we can basically let the audience have some morsel of an experience of what you experienced because of said song. So
I like it.
The first heart song, in this case your heart songs, that we're going to be tackling has to do with like your childhood, your upbringing, your younger years and such. You and I are both a child of kind of like the 80s and the 90s, so that's the area we're tackling here. And you sent me a song that I swear to God, like I'd never even heard actively. Like, you just reading the title, I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. So I listened to it several times. Really, you sent me King of Wishful Thinking by Go West. So maybe explain, if you have any specific fandom of the group, explain. If not, you don't have to. Like, how did this pop song, this fun pop song, land in your life in an inspirational way?
Like, first off, it is like the best mixed song I've ever heard in my entire life. And this thing was done, God, 90 maybe 91 maybe.
We're gonna get into that. Yeah, you almost
maybe even 8 or 9. I can't remember. But for something to be that old and sound the way it does, is that alone is like so attractive to me, because in my studio back here I have these crazy speakers, and when I first got them, that was the first song I listened to. I love that song. I've always loved that song, but that was the first thing I listened to, because I know the way that song should sound. And when I listened to it on these speakers, like I wanted to cry. It sounded so like this space in the song, and all the panning that's going on is just incredible. And like the vocals sit perfectly, and all the horns come in and out. It's like you're sitting in a Dolby Digital like movie, where it's like the all around you thing. That's just what it feels like listening to that song, just like on great speakers. And for something that is that old that can sound like that, it's like, man, what a production, what a what time that they took to whatever synthesizers they used or whatever. I don't know. It's funny because it's not like it's kind of in the vein of that Rick Astley song, Never Gonna Give You Up, just because it's like, if you watch the video, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, there's like tigers in the video, and like other just weird shit that they bring in and out. And they even did Paul Rudd did a spoof on it in I think Conan O'Brien or Jimmy Fallon. They did a spoof on it. It's like, it's absolutely ridiculous. But so that song from that time period of the 80s, when I was like in starting to get into music, like that was a huge song. That song was associated with a movie called Pretty Woman, which my mom loved that movie. So whenever it was on, my mom would watch Pretty Woman. Like, my family and I have seen Pretty Woman a ton of times, and that song just kind of like is just you know, it is the main theme of that movie, but it just always stuck around with me. And I didn't re-listen to it for, you know, it would occasionally come on, you know, but like I would hear it as elevator music. I wouldn't go like, oh yeah, that's awesome song. It wasn't until I got into my 30s and I heard that song again, I was just like, damn it, that's a great song. And I instantly put it on a playlist on Spotify, and I would just listen to it all the time. It's one of those songs that just, if it comes on, like I'm fucking listening to it. Like I'm not ever skipping over, you know. It's funny. So that like style of music just takes me back to like my childhood, like that song alone. Besides the fact that it sounds incredible, it's just so like nostalgic of like the movie, the time, like the sounds that they were coming out with at that point was, for me, that song. Everything, like, you could pick any song and I could be like, this song also has an influence from this song, or not necessarily influence, but like the elements of it are like all fall in that era of just very nostalgic for someone like you and I, you know?
Yeah.
But it's
wow.
I mean, it's the song by itself is a one-hit wonder. I believe, I'm pretty sure it had to have been. I don't remember anything else like Go West.
Pretty close. They only have a few others, but yeah.
Yeah.
And in the vein of that, maybe some fun information for you. I did some digging because I just thought it would be fun, if at all possible, depending on how, you know, crazy people, how crazy their polls are bringing into this podcast, like whether there's any info. This one, there happened to be a whole write-up in like Australian press, like, what was that, 2017, whatever that was, 8 years ago or something, as a I guess Go West was coming to town, and so they were like, well, let's tell the story of this song specifically, because apparently it saved their career. Like they had a few hits back in like the late 80s and had really been struggling, and the label had even like just put them in limbo because they're like, we don't want to deal with this. And so as a response, I guess you could say, to sort of like the fear of what's going to happen next of being put in limbo, like they started meeting the songwriters, and they ended up meeting up with this British expat. What did it say his name was? Martin Page, I think was his name. But the dude's responsible for like We Built This City, that Starship hit. There's a Heart song that he's responsible for. Point being, he had some hits under his belt at the time. And so when Peter Cox, one of Go West is a Brit pop duo, and so one of them is Peter Cox, the other one's Richard Drummey. Peter Cox sat down with this Martin guy and had remembered that he'd overheard Richard in a bar one time saying that he thought the Go West were the kings of wishful thinking. He was just like talking to the bar and dropped that line, and so Peter like hung on to that line. He's like, that'd be a good start for a song. And so apparently by the time they finished the song, the record company thought that it was a hit. And so Peter was like, tell you what, we're going to record this song with a couple of the chicks from Prince's band, The Revolution, and we're going to make like this funky thing. And he's like, it didn't work. Like they just didn't bring it. He's like, apparently you can find it sometimes somewhere online. And he's like, listen to it and you'll see why the record company sent us back to the drawing board. And so they ended up doing it again with the same production company they'd used for their last release, and it didn't go anywhere. And then third time, let's see, they got this producer named Peter Wolf. I guess he'd worked with like Chicago and Wang Chung and stuff. And
that name seems familiar.
He ended up basically in that the song came out in the version that, as you mentioned, is now popular and was a crushing hit for him. Peter from the band, Peter Cox, recalls that he remembered reading that Bruce Springsteen, when he was recording Born to Run, had to play that song like a ton of times before they eventually got the take that was on the album. And so similarly, he's like, this one just took us a little bit to get to, but he said, you know, the label kept sending us back to the studio and burning money, and they were right, because it was a hit, and it ended up like saving Go West's career, or, you know, giving him more of a career anyway. Yeah. So like,
how many times? So they would get a version of it, and the record company would say no, go back to the studio and like start over.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That must be why the production is so top notch, because they were just
And I mean, Chicago, I don't know. I feel like I've just never heard a Chicago record that didn't sound huge in that way. And that's interesting. Even when you talked about like it was the first thing you played in the studio, my knee jerk was like, did you tune the studio to that song? But I don't even know if that's how that works. I just use big words sometimes, don't know what they mean.
No, it was just about like listening to something that you know is mixed so well, and you just want to listen. You know, like there was this what's it called? Harry Styles. He was on Howard Stern, and he was talking about they were about to cover the song Sledgehammer, and they went to Peter Gabriel's studio, or a studio he recorded at in England, and Harry Styles said to the engineer there, he's like, hey, can we play Sledgehammer over the sound system? And the sound engineer said, everybody does. So it's just one of those things that it's like, you know, if you want to hear something like the best it can sound, then you gotta listen to on you know, great speakers or whatever. So yeah, that was the first thing I listened to, just because like,
wow,
yeah, it was like, it blew my mind, just like, because these things are so accurate that I could just hear all the nuances and all the cool shit they did with the panning. It blew me away. It was awesome.
Even just like the few times I was listening to it, you know, prepping for this, I listened to it, and then I found that article, and I read the history of it, and I thought, this doesn't sound like a song from that era. To your point, like it's just really souped up in ways that I'm like, where did they even have the technology to do that back then? That's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, but to your point, eventually the American leg of the record company the label that they were on is the one that was looking to just fill the Pretty Woman soundtrack with songs, and dumped that one on there. And then for some reason it just got like put in like the opening credits of that film. And just because, like, you know, the majority of the song made it in, like it just kind of became a hit in that way, because it was such a, like you said, just more or less the theme of that movie.
I love and hate the way that stuff used to work back then, where it's like, we're gonna put all of our marbles into this one song.
Yeah.
Like, you know, can you imagine that still being a thing today? Like, we just need one hit song. We're gonna spend $1 million. We're gonna get this song, and then it always pays off, you know. But there's something just like so, like, romantic about that, you know. Like, one song is all you need. Like the dude that wrote "Stand By Me," like, still collects checks to this day, and he wrote that, 50s, 60s, whichever one it was. But yeah, wrote one song, and just like, that's it. He's done. Like the rest of his life, he collects money. Like, just that, like, that world is just so cool, which is also the world that we grew up in. And like, it's insane to think about that so much time was put into the small things back then. And today it's just like, turn the fuckers out, you know?
Yeah, but ironically, I mean, both agreeing with your point, and also, I guess, my observations of how the way things work do sort of fly in the face of your point, kind of in a luck, knowing the right people, having the right people know you kind of thing. Like, success stories do seem to happen the same way, like you just being in the right place at the right time, which from anybody that I follow who's like some sort of successful entertainer of whatever caliber, they all seem to really come back and say the same thing. And it's like, if you want to focus on being famous, you're going to be miserable. If you want to do something that you love and just keep working at it, there's a really good chance that eventually you'll be famous about it for some reason, because to do all that work and to not get better at it and to not eventually have that recognized in some way is almost impossible. So as long as you love it, and you're really, by loving it, meaning you take it seriously and you devote yourself to it, and develop as an artist, there's no chance that there won't be some success. That being the case, people you're in my generation who like just missed the, we sign any band we see in a club boom, but kind of came in on the heels of like social media and things turning into this new world. You and I are probably gonna be the kind of guys that, again, if we stuck with it, even in your case, producing bands, whichever end you end up being on, are probably going to be like 70 years old, sitting in the back row of the Grammys or something, like finally having achieved something of the caliber of what we grew up respecting and loving. Because if you stay at it that long, like there's kind of no way that you don't eventually, wander into yeah, that sort of circle of fame but I don't know. That's just me saying, like, I definitely do the things that I do personally artistically because I want them to be viewed, listened to, understood, and appreciated if that's possible.
Sure.
But like the more that I do it and the more that they just seem to kind of sink into the void of the internet and just kind of disappear, and you'd have to keep talking about it if anybody was going to even realize that it still exists. For me, it's kind of more like anything I do artistically is kind of becoming this weird trail of breadcrumbs where like I just put it out there, and like if people find it and like it, then they can follow it to whatever else I do. And I don't know, it's that's not about like making a ton of money or achieving any kind of award. I suppose it's more that sick curiosity of like what's going to happen in like 20-30 years when some random group of kids is like a fan of what I do, and then I'm like, oh wow, look. Then that sort of, I don't know if I'm making sense, that sort of becomes the success, because that's what it looks like today versus to your point, what we grew up with, where it was like big record deals and millions of dollars on development and album recording, and just the kind of investment that labels don't put into artists. PS, how could they? Because anyway,
no.
That is that. And we already talked about how it ended up on the Pretty Woman soundtrack. Very cool. So song 1, thank you for putting that on my radar. It's definitely one I'm gonna like revisit, and I guess try to like just figure out how that fits in the pantheon of that kind of music that I enjoy, because it was a really unique song. Even just passing by it like 4 or 5 times like I did, like it didn't punch me in the face like that Rick Astley song, or like Everybody Just Wants to Rule the World or something like that, where for some reason it's just infectious. But it had all the elements like it could have or should have. So it's one of those I'm gonna have to like pay attention to and be like, am I not letting it just like envelop me in the joy that's built into it? Because it's a really just really kind of a different song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on that. It's probably the reason that I didn't make any knowledge of it until I was older, just having heard it so many times that when it came back into my life, it was easy for the song to come in because I knew it already. I didn't like completely know it, but it's like, again, it was elevator music for me at some point in my life. So when it came back, it was just, that nostalgia comes in. And then as I developed as a musician, like, I could hear the stuff in the song, and then now I start to really, enjoy the song more. Do you ever notice that, like, since you get better at playing, like, I like have an appreciation for like Tool now. I didn't like Tool. I've never liked Tool.
That's interesting.
I've never fucking liked them. But now, like, I'll bring up their songs every once in a while. I'm like, God, I actually really like this now, because I'm listening more. It's not just like I like it or I don't like it. It's like, I'm giving it the time, just because I know they're good. And it, you can just kind of pick up on things easier, and you can kind of relate to things easier just by listening to them. So it was just kind of that thing, I guess, just kind of appreciating this song and then growing to love it, as I changed my life and became who I am, or, and the song kind of grows with you.
With Pink Floyd and Radiohead. Like, for the longest time, people would try to show me stuff and I'd be like, cool and all, but I guess it felt overwhelming, or it felt I guess I'm over here like
trying with
Nirvana and with all this like big hard rock stuff, and then there's all these like washing melodies, and they're changing keys and doing all this stuff, and it just felt not like what I wanted to feel in the moment. And then as I got older and started to kind of like relax more, then like that warm bath of these like just melodic soundscapes were something I could really pick apart and start to, like, to your point, like understand and be like, oh wow, I see how that like shifts the mood this way, and even lyrically, like how he can take this dark piece, and I don't know. Point being, yes, took me a long time to really, and I again, weirdly, I think that's part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast, is because I'm tired of music. Most of the stuff that I'm hearing is either stuff that I've just been listening to for so long that of course I'm bored of it. I'm just over it because I've just been listening to it forever. Or it's new stuff that to me just doesn't have heart, doesn't have a point of view. It doesn't have a real story to tell. It's a cash grab of whatever somebody made happen on their computer. And so for me to talk to artists, not only of my same age, and it would be great if this show, based on its design, kind of ended up running the gamut of different demographics and different age groups. But the point being to have people bring to the front like a greatest hit of their heart, something where they're like, this grabbed me for whatever reason. And it's great that you came out swinging the way you did unintentionally, because that's kind of the point, to grab something that I would have never actively and consciously listened to or paid attention to. It would have been that like Muzak at the grocery store. I wouldn't have noticed it. And now I'm never not going to hear it because we had this conversation. I'm like, oh yeah, that song. So that's kind of the idea, is like, hopefully the viewer gets the benefit of having something pushed to the forefront that they just wouldn't have had access to before, and then have it accompanied with a story that can help them get like a foothold in it. And then it's on them to like, dive into the artist and stuff. Anywho, yes, great stuff. So digging into like the second verse of Heart Songs and dealing with the fact that now Rivers is going from, I'm a kid that listens to music that's more or less around me. I don't know that I'm making active choices about what this music is, but it's just a bunch of stuff that was within my earshot. Now he's like actively choosing his music. Second verse starts with, Quiet Riot got me started with the banging of my head. Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Slayer taught me how to shred. So the idea behind the choice of your second Heart song is now we're getting into like when music grabbed you by the balls, because now it's affecting you and talking about something that means something to you. And again, practically brilliantly, your choice for song number 2 is San Dimas High School Football Rules by the Ataris. So walk me through this on a 1999 album, like where are you at in life, and how does this song reach you and rock you like it did?
So that song, when I first heard it, was not on that 1999 album, Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, Next 12 Exits. It was on it was on an EP that they had. Prior to that, it had 4 or 5 songs in it. One song was about Claire Danes. So this is back in the day where everybody had LimeWire and Napster. Not well, yeah, I guess Napster was so kind of a thing. I didn't get to dive into Napster, but it was like LimeWire came out, and that was the one that I used or whatever. But so I went to, I got to junior high, to a new school, new district, and I met all these new people. Finding out that a lot of them lived, fairly close to me. And all of these guys were into punk. All of them were. A couple of them were actually, they were in a band together, which I ended up taking the position of the guitarist and from the guy away. I feel bad for that, but not intentionally. But anyways, my buddy Josh, who I had met, like he lived close, and we would hang out occasionally. And as I said, like all these guys, I think it came from my friend Taylor, who had an older brother that was into punk, and then kind of showed him, and then he brought it to this group of guys that included my buddy Josh, and they were all into punk, and I thought that was so cool. Oh, these guys are into punk rock. This is weird. I'm listening to R&B and stuff like that, and all the when you're young, you're trying to figure out what music you like, so you listen to everything. You go through a metal phase, you go through an R&B phase, you go through a rap phase. Like every kid does it. My son right now is in a Imagine Dragons phase, which I think is funny. Nice. But so I go to his house, and the only thing we did back then was we would play music. That was it. We'd go to each other's house, and we'd put on music and we listened to it. And it was like the first or second time I'd been to his house, and you know, he brings up his computer, you know, the old, probably like a Packard Bell old thing, and he just had so many songs, so many. And he would play through a couple. You know, oh, you gotta hear this, oh, you gotta hear this, oh, you gotta hear this. And a lot of it I'm just like, okay, you know, like I'm not quite into punk yet, so I was just like, okay, like I don't quite get it. And then he puts on the Atari Cindy's High School Football Rules, and immediately my brain just went, whoa. You always talk about, like, there's always those documentaries where those guys say, like, you know, they hear something and they go, oh my gosh, what's that? You know, and they always have the same, every rock documentary is the same way. They always talk about how they heard something and they said, who is that? And they go into it. That was that moment for me. I heard it, and it was like my segue into the world of punk, because it is punk, but it's not like, you know, Epitaph Records punk. I think they were on Fat Records at that time, which is funny. But it was like a smooth transition, like, into that world for me. So I heard that, and it was like punk, but pop. It wasn't like Blink-182 pop, but it was like this, you know, this midway between it. And it, like, and the guy's voice and the song and how catchy it was, immediately was like, oh, what is this? Like, I got to hear more. And I probably went out the next day or so and found like the EP, and bought the 5-song thing, and I played the crap out of it. I remember just, and after that, like that, you know, it was like, okay, well, what else is out there? And then I would find, you know, the other stuff on Fat Records, and then Epitaph Records, and then ska bands, and then, like, it just, everything just opened up. And, like, to this day, that's the only music that I really, really enjoy. Like, it really is punk and metal. Like, that's it. But that wouldn't have happened for me if I hadn't heard that song that day, because it was just like something just opened the doors of, like, this, because it was, you know, and that was also like an introduction into, like, punk rock songs that have, like, they're about girls, you know. Most punk songs are like, fuck the government, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, this was about a girl. And, you know, I'm a softie, and eventually that turned into me, like, loving emo music and shit like that. But like, I love that philosophy of, like, oh, it's not like punch you in the face punk rock. It's like, oh, there's like a softer side of Sears.
Yes.
Yeah, which, you know, it I don't know, it's just like a great song, and it was one of those songs that I spent the next 3 years trying to figure out how to play it, listening to it, and finding little intricacies in it, and then I tried to play in a band that covered it, but it was just like, you know, made me want to play guitar more. It made me want to be in a band. That guy Josh, like, the band, he was in a band, and they actually heard me play, or they just knew I played, so they actually kicked him out and then put me in the band, and he was angry at me for a while. I think he's probably forgiven me by now, I think.
I mean, between either having, like, an older brother that's cool, or just friends that are cool and have, like, these epic collections and stuff, just like your experience, there's probably no better way to find the music that you love than just, like, sitting on your buddy's bed or their couch or something while they're just throwing their own passion at you. Be like, you gotta hear this, you gotta hear this. And to your point, like, I have memories of just, like, droning through, I don't know, like, I had a buddy that used to play, like, Insane Clown Posse a lot. I can still remember some of the tracks, but it's not like I was like, ooh, it was just kind of something happening versus the moment, like, I don't remember what year it was. I think it was before I'd really even, like, heard Jimmy Eat World, but some dude rolled the Sweetness demo off of the end of, what is it, Clarity? Like, not the one that's on Bleed American, but, like, there was a demo of it that was the album just before it that's really good. And similarly, like, something about that just grab you by the lapels kind of a song that I just hadn't heard anything like it, and it just blew my brain up in that way. Same way you're talking about.
In that same listening session, he had shown me Static Prevails by Jimmy Eat World, and that was another huge thing, because I knew Jimmy Eat World because of the movie Never Been Kissed and Lucky Denver Mint. That's how I knew them. My brother had that soundtrack, but I think like that song, The Ataris, was the kickoff. And after I showed interest, it was like, oh, well, here's Jimmy Eat World. And at that time, like, downloading music was just a numbers game. Like, I've got 700 songs on my computer because I can. You know, you would just try to get literally everything in. And if I think back to it, I don't know if he showed me that song, or like I was just browsing through his computer and just came across that one. I can't totally remember, but yeah, he just had this array of music, just everything in the vein of punk rock was in there. And that was my mecca, just going to his house and like browsing through all of that stuff. I didn't have it, but you know, he took the time and just downloaded it. So he had everything on there.
Speaking of an array of music, I did some digging on this song, and it turns out in 2022, beginning of 2022, this website called Cleveland.com did a list of the 100 greatest pop punk songs of all time, and dumped right between 45, AFI Miss Murder, and 43, Face to Face Disconnected, number 44, The Ataris, San Dimas High School Football Rules, with this blurb to justify it. Before the Ataris were making mainstream waves with an awesome cover of a Don Henley song, which is P.S. the Boys of Summer, the band was creating the ultimate anthem about longing for the girl of your dreams, just like you talked about. The classic San Dimas High School Football Rules contains some of the best lyrics of any fast-paced pop punk love song you'll hear. Quote, I only wish that this could be, just dump your boyfriend and go out with me. I swear I'd treat you like a queen, unquote. It's a sentiment that would get echoed time and time again throughout the 2000s.
Yeah. Wow.
Wicked fun. Great pull, sir.
That song just set up everything for me. You know, my studio is named after it. Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, Next 12 Exits, Blue Exit. So it's like everything kind of fell into place. No, not fell into place, but got set up once I heard that song. It was like, I want to play guitar like this guy. I want to sing like this guy. And I think in my early days, I probably sounded pretty close to him. But like, I wanted black hair like him. You know, he's one of those guys that plays a right-hand guitar left, but the strings are still upside down.
Nice.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
He plays upside down, and like the low E is on the bottom, but that's
right.
You know, that's how we did it. So yeah, like that band has like a special place in my heart, just because, like, you know, how they affected my life. But yeah, that song specifically, it's another song. Like if it comes on, I'm fucking listening to it, like the whole thing. I'm never skipping past that song. You know, has that great intro, just do that, like super easy. The guitar part is awesome on it, absolutely awesome. The you think it's a lead part, but it's actually a rhythm and lead part together, making that. It's really cool the way that guy plays. I think the fact that he does play upside down, he has to learn to play. Like if I listen to Chris Rowe, is his name. If I listen to anything where he's in the guitar, he makes the guitar sound so much like him, just because he's playing upside down.
Yeah.
So the dynamics are all off.
Yeah.
You know, whatever he's doing, but you can just clearly tell when this dude plays the guitar. Just by the way he does it. So there's such a great sound to that entire record, Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, and the one before that. That I just think is just so perfect for that time and that era, and highly underrated. That song in my mind should have just gotten huge, but it was big, but it wasn't like Yellow Card Big, or something like that. But I think it should have been. Actually, no, that song In the Diary got pretty big, but not nearly what it should have been, in my opinion.
And talking about the style of that guitar player, I think kind of leads us really well into your next Hard song, which getting into, I guess, where Rivers was at this point, that, he, through Quiet Riot and Slayer and stuff, had learned to play guitar and had learned a love of guitar. But verse 3 of the song starts, back in 1991, I wasn't having any fun till my roommate said, come on and put a brand new record on, had a baby on it. He was naked on it. Then I heard the chords that broke the chains I had upon me. Reference to Nirvana's Nevermind.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me, although I think Weezer's music does have, especially the early music, has a lot of the rage of Nirvana. I think it's a lot more like restrained, or it's a lot more, I don't know, bottled up, which kind of creates a tension that is so specific to, I love that their music was called nerdcore out the gate, because it poised it with kids, I guess, that I identified with, who were the ones in the corner watching all the cool kids having fun and just feeling like they didn't have the balls or even the invitation to get out of their chair and just go be a cool kid and have all the fun that they're watching everybody else have. But specifically in relation to that verse and how it relates to this podcast, talking about a song that kicked the doors off of your own, I guess, perception of yourself as a musician and an artist, and presented a world where you could do you, be you, and I guess really find you. Of all the times that I guess I would figure that would happen to somebody with like somebody else's song, for you, it happened with one of your songs, which I think is even more powerful. The Heartless's 2009 song, Just to Be. So walk me through how, like, I don't know if there was a specific moment, because I'm sure, like most songs, like it had a writing process, so it wasn't just, it didn't come out the child that it ended up being. Like, where do you remember it hitting that space for you, where you're like, this is who I am and who I want to be and who I will be?
So it's not the song that is the topic, really. It's the time period and what the song meant at that time, because it's associated with just so many things that, like, my life changed when that song was written. Not the fact that the song was written, because what happened after that song was written. So yeah, that was the last song that was brought to practice in that version of the Heartless, with the four of us with Chris. That was the last song we ever played.
Wow.
Yeah. So he brought this song in, a skeleton of it, and this was the only song that we had written together, because at that time, Never Say Never was done, and they wrote it. I just put lead guitar on it, but this was the first song that we wrote after Never Say Never came out. And again, it was called Thanks for the Fire initially, and
wow.
Yeah, and completely different lyrics. It wasn't not called Just to Be. But the melody was relatively the same.
Wow.
So yeah, Chris had the idea. He brought it in, and we spent time writing together for the first time. And by the time we left that practice, that song was ready to go. And then the next practice, or even, gosh, maybe even that day, I can't remember, I recorded my first Heartless song, which was that. We did a demo of it, just because, we made this, like, I'm brand new at recording. I have this thing that I kind of know how to use, so yeah, I'll demo it. So I demoed that song. And it's the first Heartless song that I demoed. After that song, the band went away. The band was done. Our singer had moved away, and it was like we got to make something, and then it's just all gone. But, you know, we still had a new song. We had a future. We had something new. And that was like the last flame just kind of still flickering off in the distance was we have something new. So after Chris left, it was like, well, I don't want to quit. I released an EP. We have a new song. This is all new to me. You know, I was 24 maybe. Never had a lick of any success. All my shows were dog shit. Next thing I know, I joined this band and I'm playing the Marquee Theater and I'm releasing a record. I'm recording with Bob Hogue. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's gonna happen. It's all gonna happen. Then nothing happened, but it was like, okay, but we still have something. We're still working on something. Let's keep going. So Ryan and I would get together, twice, 3 times a week, just writing. Just like, we want to make more. We want to make more songs. So Johnny had quit at that point too. We kept, it was just me and Ryan. That was it. So we started writing, just building, you know, on top of this thing. Like, we have one good song. We're going to make more. We're going to make a record. We're not giving up. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, we need a drummer. Let's go find a drummer. We need a singer. We need a bass player. I met you. And it was, you know, and then we kept writing, and then Johnny came back, and then we had a drummer and a singer for a while that they lasted probably about a month. I'm not sure if you were in by that point.
No, I was in the Johnny days, so no.
You were in the Johnny days, yeah.
So
we didn't have Abe, but we had a singer. We had a drummer that was singing backups, and then we had a singer for a bit, and we had wrote a couple of the songs that Ryan and I did. I demoed those too.
Yeah,
those are out there somewhere. I don't know, but yeah, a couple of the songs off that record, One Night Stanza, I have different demos of different lyrics. They're somewhere out there. But you know, we had everything come together in that band, you know, just because we had this one song still, and it was like it was new, and as I said, it was like the thing to build upon. And then you know, we finally got a band back together, and eventually that song then, well, I mean, actually before then, when it came to recording, like, I was like, I want to take a stab at this now. Like, I want to record Just to Be, like, with the band, and it got me into like recording more, just from doing that. And then, you know, I met you. I did your record, and then I, you know, met Johnny, and then I met Andy and did Andy's record. But it all just kind of came because, like, you know, from like just recording something and then something happening and then giving me another chance to record something else, and then a couple more things happened to give me a chance to record something else. But and then that song Just to Be got us on the Howard Stern show a couple of years later, and then that song was, you know, just, you know, it just kept living on in different iterations, and now currently when we play a live show, we play Thanks for the Fire. We don't play Just to Be. Chris went back to his original lyrics. Yeah, it's funny, but so
it'll be interesting if he sees this episode, like if that has an impact on his perspective, where he's like, you know, based on your love of that song, Jeff, I mean, it wouldn't destroy me to play Just to Be.
I mean, I get it. He wrote it as one thing originally, and like the lyrics weren't fully developed. It was a lot of it was just kind of improvised that he did, and he still does that same improvisation to this day, which, like, the lyrics don't really make any sense the way that Chris sings them, just because this is how we did it from day one. So, like, you know, so we're doing, so if you know, if we play, which is never, then that's what we do, which is kind of funny. So this the song lives on in different ways. And, you know, so like we recorded that song 3 times. We did it as a demo, as Thanks for the Fire. We did it as Jeff to Be, which, you know, was on the record, and got some of the Howard Stern show. And then Abe left the band right after that.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So that song was birthed from somebody leaving, and then you know, the second we recorded another version of it, like somebody quit the band. So it just has like these peaks and valleys of like, you know, of that song. So yeah, you know, it got me into recording. It got me playing. I met so many people from deciding to continue.
Yeah.
Like so many. You.
Yeah.
If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Chris. Yes. Ross. Mm-hmm. Like all these people I would not have met. Yeah. You know. So again, it's not the song. It's just what that meant.
It's the spark of your life. Like the life you wanted came out of the flame that was sparked by that song. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mostly can't stand that song now, but you know, just because, you know, you play something so much, but like, you know, it means a lot to me, you know, what it turned into, and how many struggles go along. Like if I hear that song today, like I instantly just have like animosity towards it. Like, oh, like what'd you do to me in my life, you know? Bringing me up, bringing me down, and you know, so love hate with that thing for sure. But ultimately, it put me where I think I am. Like, yeah.
And I guess connected to that place where you am, as a means of, I guess, trying to figure out how to like land the show and leave people with a collective sense of who the artist that we're talking to that week feels that they are, and what they desire to contribute to the world. The fourth heart song that I asked you to present basically just has to do with something that you love and something that you hope other people register emotionally with and appreciate, I guess, as your contribution to the world. And I thought it beautiful that for you, that was the studio, Blue Exit Audio. And what becomes interesting about that, both in what you brought up earlier, that the song or the title of the studio comes from that Atari's album that just broke you open all those years ago. Beyond that, you and I being able to talk about this is very special for me, because when you talk about like when you and I recorded together, like Blue Exit, maybe it was an idea in your head and you just hadn't quite got there yet, but we were recording in a loft of like above the garage of like your dad's garage thing, and it was literally just a loft studio back then. So for me to be, I mean, one of the first handful of albums even cut on that equipment, that to your point was like your birth into becoming like a producer and a full-on engineer as you currently are appreciated as, is a big deal for me, because it's kind of like, I feel like my relationship with Blue Exit is literally ground floor in the sense of being able to see it in its most bare bones sense and see you in your most bare bones sense, and to watch. It's almost like I've worked with you when there really was nothing and you were just doing your best, and I've worked with you when you got like the Neve console and you just had developed out a thing that you had more presence and confidence behind, and you were just killing it behind that console. And I enjoyed the collaborative element of the early days and how you would just throw anything, any idea that you could think of or that the artist could think of against the wall to just see if the song would come together with all of these different, all these different ideas, and then to watch that merge and I guess develop and eventually like coalesce into your, recent years and your recent work and the level of experience and confidence with which you sit behind the console now, and your familiarity with plugins, and somebody throws a big pedal board down below you, you're like, yeah, I know all about that. Like, just how, I guess, maybe connected to what you said about all the people you've been able to meet over the years and be able to work with over the years. Every inch of what you learned from working with all those people and working with all this equipment and working with music and working with song structure and working with album flow and all of it just becomes more and more evident with every project that you tackle. And so I just thought it was perfect that the thing that you love the most and would want anybody to love the most is what you've been able to accomplish with Blue Exit Audio. Thanks,
man. That means a lot. Yeah, I always just wanted this studio to be, it's always been in a home. I always wanted people just to come here and do like you said, like let's throw some shit at the wall and see if it sticks. Like, I don't want people to come in and just be like, hey, just press record for me. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want a record to be done and just, like I listened to the remaster of Delusions, and just sitting there listening to like all just this fucking weird shit that we did, of like, I forget what something is. There's so many things in that we just did that were just off the wall.
I'll give you the list right now. The time that you screamed into a microphone that was plugged into a guitar amp just to get like this really feedbacky, like, that's the scream before the first chorus of Hey You. There's like this like and it's like speeding that's you screaming into a guitar amp that has a mic pointed at it. The like flange phase delay thing on the beginning of Lead Me On, where it has like that stop moment, like there's, I mean, the lead guitar part of Even Now, like you wrote and you're just like, play this, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so that like yep, just all on the spot, and helped the song, made it, I guess, to your point of being able to like listen to a song like the Go West song and be able to appreciate the intricacies of it. To your point, when I listen to that stuff now, I feel like I can hear every instrument, and I just think it's so interesting that we managed to make each instrument interesting, if that makes sense. It kind of all stayed in its own spot, and it wasn't muddy and just all, running over the top of each other. Like it was very orchestrated, which shouldn't have happened since we were just a couple of dumb 20-year-old kids. Like, that doesn't make sense that we were that intelligent, but we did a good job.
Well, I think that was what was so great about those sessions is like, there wasn't, we never said no to something. Like, no one said no, but it was like, and there was space in between each song. It was never like, okay, we're doing guitars for this, and this, and this today. It's like, no, we're doing guitars for one song today, and it was always like kind of like a blank slate. And that's like, for me, that, and being in that loft area was just such like a heyday for me, because like, A, I was so grateful that people would let me press record on anything that they had. And B, having people that would be like, yeah, like whatever, let's just try some stuff. And we would just spend hours just making something, like a 5-second thing happen in the song. And then, that kind of thing. That's what I love. And that's what I still try to push in here whenever I have bands in. It's like, if you want to have the best experience in the studio, just like, let's just let things just roll, like let's just try stuff. And it's so hard to get people to do that these days. But that's, like, I want to fucking make something. I'm here. I don't want to just record your guitar. I want to make something. That, that's what I want to do, is like, I want to have people like come in here, and then when they leave, just go like, man, that was A, fun, but B, the song doesn't sound anything like I thought it was going to, just because like we decided to just be creative and not work, like try stuff and just make sounds that have never been heard before. But yeah, that's it. I want to make, like, being a musician's fucking hard. really hard. It's hard to do anything. It's hard to like promote your own stuff, and play shows and all the stuff that comes along with it. But for me, like, it's so gratifying to make something that I didn't write, but like, and to have like, but I still have my stamp on it, and then to send it out to the world, and like no one will ever know that I did anything on it. You know, the engineer never gets credit for anything, but like I can listen to something years down the line and go like, oh yeah, that was my idea. That was my stamp on this.
Yeah.
You know, that was my point in time. And that's just such a great feeling for me, is to like, you know, have little I forget the word, but like little ghosts everywhere in every song. Like little things,
little Easter eggs, little Jeff Easter eggs.
Thank you, Easter eggs,
all over the
little
place.
Easter eggs and songs. Which is, you know, it can get a bit ridiculous sometimes. Like, you know, I like pulling shit from movies and putting them in songs, and like all the just weird crap that I do. But you know, if someone lets me do it, I'm like, yeah, awesome, let's keep going, let's do something awesome. So yeah,
that's epic, bro. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna put the link to your studio and stuff in the description of the video, not just so people can go and check out all the great records that you've made, but if they're an artist, which I imagine they might be, if they watch a show like this, they might actually come hit you up for some business and come cool. Sit in the studio with you, just like you suggested, and be like, you know what, don't even bring songs in. Let's just write the album here. Let's make something together.
Yeah.
Again, all your links will be down below so people can check you out. And again, anybody that's paying attention to this and is in the Metro Phoenix area, Blue Exit Audio is a fantastic experience, cost effective. It's a good situation. Go do it, Jeff. You're my ride or die for jumping in this pool with me when
man.
It's really nothing more than a crazy idea I had. So thank you for that. And love your face.
Love you too,
thanks for being on the show. These are the songs we keep singing, and hope to God, audience, we'll see you next time. See you, brother.